Good morning, it's Friday, February the 19th, and we're working our way through Ephesians as part of our daily thoughts. And today we're looking at a few verses from Ephesians 2, and we're looking at Ephesians 2, 11 to 13. So, only 3 verses, but they're good 3 verses. So, this bit here is entitled Jew and Gentile Reconciled Through Christ. So let's have a look at them. Therefore, remember that formerly you who are Gentiles by birth and called uncircumcised by those who call themselves the circumcision, which is done in the body by human hands, remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenant of the promise, without hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. So yes, 3 verses, like I said, but 3 big important verses. And there's 2 things I wanted to look at from these verses. The first one is about circumcision. Now, being the mother of 3 boys, there's very little that makes me blush. So talking about circumcision, I'm fine. But yeah, I read an interesting thing the other day, and it talked about circumcision in this book, and it was talking about circumcision as an act of trust. And this book that I'm reading, it's called The Rest of God, all about Sabbath. Highly recommend it, by Mark Buchanan. But this talks about the act of circumcision being an act of trust. Obviously, you've got to trust somebody who is holding a very sharp knife or a sharp bit of flint, as they would have had in those days, to make a cut in such an intimate and vulnerable part. And it says in verse 11, it says it's done in the body by human hands. And Mark Buchanan talks of circumcision as being a scar, a wound that sets this man apart. And it says that even here, he is a marked man. He is one who belongs to God. That is trust, to allow a hand to wield a knife in this place, to cut such a vulnerable, valuable, intimate part of the man, and for no reason other than God has chosen this means and this place to mark him. That is supreme trust. If you think about, we don't want to get into the gory details, but there would have been a lot of blood, and that blood was shed for the purpose of being marked. That was what God had chosen to do in this intimate and vulnerable part of a man's body. And then we look at the end of the passage we're reading today in verse 13. And it says, but now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. And it's that shedding of blood again. It's the sacrifice that Jesus did for us, so that we as Gentiles, so we as non-Jews, can also share in this inheritance. And we read in Galatians 3, and I think it's verse 26. So in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So we see that now we don't need this mark of circumcision, because that mark of vulnerability and that mark of sacrifice has been taken by Jesus for us, and it's through our faith in Christ Jesus and what he did for us that now makes us heirs, along with those who were originally destined, the Jews who were circumcised, who had this mark on them. We are now joined in that promise, in that covenant. And the other thing I wanted to discuss, where it said, remember at that time you were separate from Christ, us as Gentiles, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without hope and without God in the world. And I've been studying recently, as part of my college course, the story of God's people throughout the Bible, and reading the story of God's people in the Bible, and reading all the Old Testaments and all the different stories. As a Christian, brought up in a Christian family, it's very easy to be over familiar with the stories in the Old Testament, or to sort of read them all, we've heard them growing up, and perhaps we don't recognise that the stories and the history in the Old Testament, that's now our history too. That's now our heritage too, because we've been adopted into this family, because we are now part of this covenant and this promise. This is now our history. And it's been really good to look at that through different eyes, through a different perspective, to recognise that it's really important to read these verses in the Old Testament and these stories and these histories, and to recognise that now we are part, as I said, of this covenant and this promise. But before we weren't, and without Jesus we're not. So it's recognising and reading these promises and being blessed by them, but recognising it's only through what Jesus has done has made us co-heirs with Israel, with the people that God gave his promises and his covenants to. So I really would encourage you, if you haven't read the Old Testament in a while, or you're perhaps thinking that it's not really for us now, Jesus has come, so we need to focus on the New Testament, which I was totally guilty of. I really would encourage you to go back and really dig deep into the promises in the Old Testament, and to really just take them all in, and appreciate that now these are our promises, this is our heritage, this is our history, and it's really special to look at that too. So I really would encourage you. Have a lovely day. See you soon. Bye.